Good day, and today we're going to start working on the second part of making a medallion with text. So I'm going to load up our first part here, and I'll just click on Tinker this. That should load up our little disk that has a hole cut in it, basically. And I'm scrolling forward with 2 fingers on my trackpad. Then I hold Control. My thumb goes down on the trackpad and my index finger drives me around so I can see what's going on. Remember that we had a 3mm lip here. That's probably the smallest you want to make many of your details in TinkerCAD because 2mm and 1mm are just very, very small. So let's keep that in mind when we add some text to this. So on the right hand side, you can see that we have a text option under the basic shapes. I encourage you to stay with the basic shapes because if you can master these shapes, there's very little you can't do. I mean, you can build almost anything you can imagine with just these basic shapes. So I'm going to pull the text box out. You can see that this text is so much bigger than my object. So I'm going to drop it out here and zoom out a little. Now, once the text object is out here, you can resize this just like you could resize any object in TinkerCAD. I also notice on the right-hand side when I have text selected, remember you can tell it's selected when you have these little boxes down here, I see the word text. I'm going to change that to the word thank. Whoops, I accidentally clicked the button that made it hollow. Didn't want to do that. My cursor must not have been in the text box. So now I'm going to type it all in capital letters. T-H-A-N-K. There we go. Now when I click off, I can see the word thank you. Or actually thank. I'm going to do you as a separate one. Now this word is obviously way too big for our shape. Our shape is only 26.5 millimeters wide. And I can tell that by clicking on a corner and I can see both of those dimensions. So I know I need this one much smaller. So to eyeball things and get a good gauge, I'm going to grab this corner here and start playing around with size. What I'm concerned about is how big can this be where I can still read the words, but also have it fit in the space. And remember, I said 3mm is kind of like the minimum. And you notice already, it's only 2.8 here. So why don't I set that to 3 to automatically put that limit in there. Now I can rotate around and see how that looks. Well, that's not horrible. I mean, I can use my arrow keys now to slide it around. And by default, if I look down here in the lower right-hand corner, see where it says Snap Grid 1mm? That means that with an object selected, I can use my arrow keys. And every time I use my arrow keys, it moves around 1mm. And that kind of gives me some ideas of, okay, how much space do I really have? I can go ahead and keep this at 3 and maybe move this 11 to maybe 13. I'm just guessing to see how this works. And then I'll use my arrow keys to move it over a little bit. That's not too bad. I'm going to use my alignment tool. I'm just going to highlight the object and my text. And I'm going to go to my alignment tool, and I would like to get these two horizontally centered. So I'm just going to click that center button. You notice how it grays out once I do that. That centers the word thank horizontally with my shape. And I did that just to see, okay, when I float around, what does this look like? Obviously, that text is way too tall. Remember that this rim here on this orange piece, if we look at the height, it's only 6mm high. So I want my text to be right around that height. So let's click on my text and we'll bring that down to 6 just to see what it looks like. This might be a good time to point out that although this text shows up red, when you print, it's going to show up orange. So for that reason, I almost think I want my text to be at least a millimeter more than the edging here. I'm going to put mine to 8 millimeters just to see what that looks like. Now, please be aware that after we print the first one of these, we may find out that the size is just wrong. Maybe we need to bump this up to 4 millimeters. Maybe we have to bring this down. We don't know. We're going to have to see what it looks like when we print it. Now that I have the word thank done up correctly, or at least something that looks good, it's centered, I've got it at the right height. It's about 2 millimeters above the edges here. I want to duplicate this. So a reminder from yesterday, if we click on the word thank and do a Control D, that should duplicate, and I should be able to just use my arrow keys. Remember, the arrow keys just move it 1 millimeter at a time. And I'm just moving it straight down, so I don't have to worry about left and right now. Now, obviously, the word thank has more characters in it than the word you. So I'm going to come over here to my text, and I'm just going to type in you. Again, keeping it all capitals. Let's put an exclamation point in there. We want people to know we're excited about this. So now I can take a look at what I have. I have thank you. I'm going to click on the orange thing and go to the home because I'd like to recenter that a little bit. Notice that if I move my cursor over here and zoom in, it moves me a little left. If I move my cursor over here and zoom in, it moves me a little right. So wherever your cursor is when you're zooming in, that's where you're going to zoom into. And if you find that you zoom into someplace silly like this and you can't see anything, remember that the home key, the home view, moves you right back and you can recenter yourself on where you want to be. Just a little navigation trick. So this looks a little good. I think I want the word thank a little higher. So I'm going to click on it and move it up a little bit. And then I'm going to move the U down just one more. Well, yeah, that's pretty good right there. Now I need, I think teacher had suggested maybe putting like a star in here. We are doing some kind of Veterans Day little gift. We do need a hole because this could be like a medallion you hang from someone's neck. So I'm going to grab this clear cylinder up here. Again, I just went to the basic shapes and dragged out a clear cylinder. And again, I said the minimum width of something should be about 3 millimeters. I don't know if 3 millimeters is going to be enough for this. So at least I'm just going to get it down to 3 millimeters by 3 millimeters to have something to start with. In fact, I'm not going to keep it at 3. I'm going to go with something big enough that they can put yarn through, string through, maybe a metal chain through. I don't know what they're going to put through this. So I'm going to move that up more like 4 or 5 millimeters. I'm going to start with 5 just to see what that looks like. It might be too big. Now, because this is a hole, I really don't care about the height. So I'm just going to shrink it down a little bit because I just don't want a cylinder that tall running around my screen. But because it's a hole and it's really an invisible object, I don't really care how big that is. So now I have this hole. Is it going to fit where I put my thank you stuff? So I might slide this around a little. And now I get a chance to see how big that hole is. Maybe I put the hole right in the rim. Because sometimes there's a clasp or something that they're going to use that they only need a little bit of plastic on the edge. Now, how much is there? Well, if this is 3 millimeters, that only looks like a millimeter distance here. So I might want to nudge that in. Well, I can use my arrow keys, remember? Each arrow key is going to be 1 millimeter. I can see I'm touching the edge here. See down here? I touch the edge. I'm going to use my arrow keys. 1, 2 millimeters in might be good. Now, what's that do on the other end when I look at my thank here? I'm going to spin right around here. It looks like my thank is really close to that hole, so I'm going to bring my thank down 1. just to give me enough room for that hole. Now this hole I want centered with the orange. So I'm going to click on the hole. I'm going to click on the orange. So I have just the hole and just the orange. And I'm going to group, wait, sorry, I want to align these first. I'm going to only align these horizontally. Once they're aligned, and I can tell that because the gray circle is highlighted after I clicked on it, I'm going to go to group. And what that'll do is that'll cut the hole out of the orange thing. That may take a little while. You notice my computer's processing that a little bit, but I can go on and do other things while it's processing that. So the thank you, I'm going to make sure that both of these are centered. So I clicked on thank and I held shift and I clicked on you. I'm going to hit the alignment tool. See, they're not centered here. I can tell they're not centered because the dot is black. If I click on it, now that I've clicked on it, it turns gray to tell me these are now centered. Because that was bugging me a little bit. There was a little bit of an optical confusion there. So we have a hole going in. We have our thank you aligned. We're ready to put like a star shape. So I'm just going to grab a star. That star looks a little big, you think? This is probably going to have to be like our minimum size here. So I'm going to bring that down to 3. That's a funny looking star. And then I'm going to bring this down to 3. All right, that's better. And let's put it in here. That's kind of small when I put it in there. We don't worry about the height yet. I'm just looking at the size. Although if I look at the space between thank and you, that looks pretty evenly spaced. Let's try it at 4 millimeters just to see what happens. 4 millimeters, change that to 4 millimeters. And I want to find a happy medium. Here it's touching thank. That's 1, 2, 3. I'm hitting my arrow keys. So about 1.5. I really can't line that up very easily. So I might have to go down to the snap grid, and I can always change how much it moves. So I said it was at 1 earlier. I can move it down to 0.5 millimeter at a time. Now when I move my arrow keys, it's going to move 0.5 millimeter each time. So there's 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3. So now I can easily go up 1.5. So 0.5, 1, 1.5. That's halfway between them. Now I can clearly see, oh, finally finished the hole up here. I can see, that's probably because I'm recording, so it took a while to do. I can click on my star, and I can click on the orange, holding shift. That highlights the star and the orange, and I can go back to my alignment tool to make sure these are centered. There, just nudge that over a little bit. You can see my center button is already highlighted. And now I'm going to work on the height. That height of that star, I really want that to be the same height as my text. If I forgot what the height of my text was, I can click on my text and hit the center box, and you see that it's 8 millimeters high. So let's put this at 8 millimeters high as well. I click on the center, and I click in the box, and I just type 8. So now I have text. I have it lined up. I have it at the correct height that I want to try it with. And I have a hole that I can pass string or cord or something through. At this point, I think I'm almost ready to print. I would like to group this. You don't have to, but I like to do it just to see, okay, when it's all the same color, what does it look like? So I'm going to highlight this whole thing. I just did a marquee select around by doing this box. Remember, that's called a marquee select. When it's all selected, I'm just going to group. And after, again, I'm recording, so this may take a while. The color doesn't matter in terms of the printer. I can come up here and choose a lighter color if I want to really see things. I can see the details. Now I really want to fly around all over, because what I'm looking for is, did I accidentally lift this shape off the surface? Because if I did, I'll have floaties, and we can't print floaties because there's nothing underneath. Here it looks like it's right on the surface because I really didn't lift anything. I just changed the height of something. I can look over here. I'm looking to see how my alignment looks. It looks like the gap here is the same as the gap here. I'm making sure that my hole goes all the way through. So I've changed my angle so I'm looking straight down. Best of all, after I'm all done with this, I'm going to look at the name to make sure that I have my name, some indication of what project I'm working on, and which grade I'm in, because there may be multiple grades trying to print stuff at the same time. I'm going to hand this off now to a friend of mine in class and say, can you look at my work, please, and make sure it's ready to print? And if somebody asks you to do that, please take the time to really look at their work. You want to be thinking about things like 3D printers cannot have something suspended. So I'm going to exaggerate something here. I'm going to lift this up. If somebody had an object like this, you want to remind them that things can't be floating like this. They have to be on the surface. And if they don't remember how to move things up and down, I don't know that we've covered that as a group, but this black triangle here, not the white box does the thickness, but this black triangle allows you to move up and down. Now, as I start dragging it, you'll see on the right-hand side over here, this box, and I can type that into 0. Please don't do this unless you've already got something floating around. But I'm just showing you that because that's one of the things we have to check each other on. Am I floating? The other thing you want to check is, are things connected? Some people, when they put their text on their object, they tried to pick their text up instead of just making their text 8 high. They tried to pick their text up. Let me see if I can show you what that would look like. So here's my thank. Somebody might have done something like this, where they clicked on the black and they moved this up. So when I look at it like this, it looks like they're ready to print. They're all set. Let's ship it to the printer. Well, here's the problem. We get to the printer, and then the printer says, all right, let me cut this in layers. It's really hard for me to get in there enough, but let me see. There's actually a space here between the red thank and the orange base, and it's almost impossible to tell that. Now I'm going to undo that because I just moved that. And I'm going to undo my leveling thing I just did because I know I had just messed that up, and I really don't want it messed up because I'm ready to print. So we don't want things floating above surfaces. We want to make sure things are aligned. We can go ahead and ungroup it. Like, I don't know how big this hole is. So I may ask, Ed, how big was your hole? I don't know. So I'm going to click on the orange. I'm going to ungroup it. Then I'm going to click off someplace and then click on the hole and check the measurements. Okay, you did do 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters. Good job on that. Now, because I had just ungrouped it, I can do a Control-Z to undo my ungrouping, which basically puts the hole back. And then I might want to check, well, the project said that this had to be a certain size. Did the person do it the right size? Is it 26.5 by 26.5? That looks good. But did they do the height right? So I might click on the height, and this says 6. Now this says 6 only because I ungrouped it. Remember, the text was 8. So if the teacher has given me all these requirements, I want to ungroup their shape to really check all the measurements that the teacher gave me. So yes, they did the text and the star at 8. They did the edges at 26.5 by 26.5, and they did the height of that ring on the outside by 6. They also did the hole to be 5 millimeters. I think this is ready to print. And with that, you can now say, hey, Mr. Latham, maybe send me an email. This is Ed from the 5th grade at HES. Could you take a look at my print and see if we can get that printed at some point? And then we can work on getting it printed. Now, this is a video, so please, I'll remind you, you can go back, rewind things, play it over and over again. But if you have questions that maybe I didn't answer in this video, please send me an email and I can get back to you with some clarifications and ways to fix things. Again, we may print our first one and find out that the font is, the size of the letters are too small, too big, the hole's too big, maybe the ring around the edge is too big. We don't know. We're just guessing right now at what makes sense, we think. Once we print the first one, all of us may have to go back and readjust our sizes based on what we see. Now, little bit bonus here. If you've got this far and you don't want to deal with bonus, don't listen to the following. If you want a challenge, you can make each one of your letters individual letters. So I may just make the letter T. With the only 1 week limit we have here, I probably would not engage in this too quickly right off unless you really feel confident that you know what you're doing on this. So I have changed this to a 3x3 letter just to have a shape size I want to work with. And remember that we can put other shapes in here temporarily. So I'm just going to duplicate this so I have a dummy model I can work with. I'm going to ungroup it and I'm going to get rid of the thank you here. So now I can take this letter T, and if I have a cylinder that I throw in there, let's say I want to make it, I'm just going to arbitrarily come up with a size here, 4x4. This is a temporary cylinder. I'm just using it to space out my text. I think we talked about this in class. I'm going to bring that up to more like an 8x8 and see what that looks like. I'm going to center on that cylinder again. Remember, I can zoom in wherever my cursor is so I have a better look of that. And I'm going to want to center these things. So I'm going to click on the center cylinder. I'm going to click on the outer cylinder, and I'm going to go to the alignment tool and center this in both the horizontal and vertical. So those are centered. With those two centered, I can now go to my letter T, and I can click on what's called a protractor. You'll notice there's a protractor up here that affects the front to back rotation. There's one on the bottom that affects the side to side rotation. And I believe there's another one here. I might have to move around. It's hard because oh, there it is right here. This one affects the left to right rotation. So I would want this bottom one here. And this gets really tricky because I want the flat part of that T to touch the cylinder. And I can come over here and just drag this around a little bit. So it looks like it might be touching a little. I might have to drag this over. Because again, I have to fit the whole word thank you in there. And I want to rotate that a little bit more. So I'm going to click the bottom rotation. So it's just touching the cylinder. That looks pretty good right there. That T looks like it's, maybe I need to rotate it a little bit more. So changing your angle is going to be really important. Now I notice that when I go to click on this, that little 0 shows up, so I have to click and move it. I would like that to come straight out of that cylinder like it was just being shot out of there. There we go. So now I have a T touching that cylinder. I would do an H, I would do an N, a T-H-A-N-K, and then do Y-O-U on the bottom. And then I would delete this cylinder, and I would have kind of like a curved thank and a curved U, and then I could put the star right back in the middle. Again, this is just an extra challenge for those of you who want to push yourself. If you're waiting for a chance to print, you can make a copy of this program and try doing the advanced version if you're waiting for others to get their prints done. Just wanted to give that challenge out to you because some of us, we have a little bit of extra time to work on this and we want something else to learn. Definitely a good skill to learn is how do you change straight text to curved text. And that'll be all for this video. Thank you very much for giving this a try and being patient. Learning this is definitely something new as it's in a 3D environment. Have a great day.